Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento. And if you lived your whole life thinking, gosh, I was not a good student, I didn't find the career path that I enjoyed, but that's why you're pulled to entrepreneurship, then you're going to love today's guest. You're going to love his story. You're going to love his career transitions and how he has taken massive action to really do something cool in a space that he was familiar with, but something where he gets to serve so many people in a really meaningful and impactful way in a very complex industry. So let me tell you about today's guest. His name is Ryan George. He's the vice president of Part C, which is a national healthcare insurance brokerage specializing in Medicare and individual health insurance. His path into the industry, though, was anything but typical because he will be the first to admit that he was a terrible student and he didn't read a full book until he was in college, but his passion for business led him to the finance and insurance space, where he found success in estate planning before realizing it wasn't for him. So what did he do then? Well, he started his first venture in commercial insurance, and it failed. And then he decided, I'm going to start toying around with and maybe going into veterinary clinics. And he decided against that, but that's when he discovered Medicare and never looked back. Now, Ryan and his team help Medicare beneficiaries navigate their coverage, ensuring they're in the best possible plans year after year. They partner with financial firms, insurance brokerages, and pharmacies to support Medicare clients. And his journey, like so many entrepreneurial journeys, is one of persistence, adaptation, and finding success in unexpected places. So I'm excited about this one. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Ryan George. All right, Ryan, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
Heck yes, I teased a little bit about your entrepreneurial beginnings with your bio, but take us beyond the bio. Who's Ryan? How'd you start doing all these things?
Yeah, sure. So let me, date back. Like you said, I was not a good student. That was never my strong suit. I probably ventured more into the social aspect. That was more of my strong suit. Out of college, wasn't really sure what I was going to do. Ended up going into financial advising and estate planning world, was in that for about 12, 13 years. I did that with my partner, went to law school with my dad. That's how I ended up getting involved in that. But ultimately, it just wasn't for me. I hated the aspect of just sitting around with wealthy people, just trying to handle things all day. For them, wasn't really my speed. So yeah, like you said, I transitioned over. I bought a home and auto commercial insurance agency, actually out of Florida, and that failed. It was miserable. Hated that, learned real quick, was not a fan. And then, found a guy that I was going to partner with for vet clinics. He owned about 3 of them, ended up selling those, had a non-compete, and then I fell into the Medicare space, and here I am today.
Yes, I love that overview, especially because Ryan, here on this show, we so appreciate transparency and honesty, and the fact that you are so open about the fact that your first venture didn't work. I'd love for you to go deeper there, because most sane people, we entrepreneurs, we're definitely not sane, but most sane people would go through that and say, all right, I'm just going to go get a job. That is the way easier way. Walk us through your mindset when you decided, no, this is the beginning of an entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, for sure. So this kind of dates back to when I just graduated college. Wasn't real sure what I was going to do. And I had to do a business plan. And the business plan that I drew up, it was called Party U. I know, not very creative, but it was similar. It was around 2010-ish. This was similar to when Barstool Sports was kind of on the rise and they were doing their kind of party stuff, things like that. So I did that with a buddy of mine for a little bit. That was kind of my first soiree. We did some colleges and things like that. Ran out of money quick, realized I needed a job, went to the financial world, if you will. And then from there, said, well, I got a lot of business owner clients. Let's do the commercial route. Went there. They agreed to allow me to come. One of my largest clients was a privately held tool rental company that's nationwide. So I thought that was going to be a layup. It was anything but. Basically, when I got in, they said, okay, we don't really want you to do the commercial aspect of things anymore. We just want you to focus on home and auto. That was for about 2 years. Couldn't take it anymore, bowed out. And it was I was 25, 26, 27 is when I got out of that. But yeah, it was a tough pill to swallow. I really thought that I could kind of make it work and just grind it out, but that was anything but. So I mean, I don't know. I'm just a big believer in, you just kind of keep going until you ultimately figure out what it is that you're kind of meant to do. And don't let things stop you. Because at the end of the day, I mean, the only way you lose the game is if you quit. So I just kind of kept trudging along, if you will. And that's how I ended up where I am today.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I mean, you and I are of the same generation. So looking at with what Dave Portnoy did with Barstool Sports, that was also an inspiration for me early on in my entrepreneurial scene, because I think you and I would both admit that it looks easier than it is. That's why I have all the respect in the world for Dave and everything that they've built over at Barstool Sports. But I would also argue, I want to add on to the point that you made, and that is not only are you willing to just do things and figure it out along the way, but you also accumulated skills, experiences, perspectives that you probably didn't realize would serve you in future endeavors, whether you like them or not. Talk to us about some of those skills or mindsets or experiences that you picked up that in hindsight, you're thinking, gosh, I'm glad I did that because now I use that to this very day.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the biggest things is, I mean, I know it's cliche and kind of corny, but just networking and just talking to people in general. Obviously today, this is a podcast, I guess, about me. I'm not usually I am open. I'm an open book. I'm not usually very comfortable talking about myself. So ordinarily, I just ask a lot of questions and listen to people. So that was one of the big keys, I would say, to kind of getting to where I am and hopefully where I'm going to go. It's just being able to mix it up with different people in that kind of way, because ultimately you don't know where you can go. So I don't ever really like to close a book on anybody or burn a bridge. You don't know what ultimately the future will bring you. So I always try to keep an open mind with that. I always try to listen. I never know who's going to have an idea for me that might not be for me in the current moment, but hey, maybe they have a better sense of what's good for me. So I'm always down to just listen to people. And I think that's one of the key things. And then ultimately, I used to want to own car dealerships growing up. So in college, I sold cars. This was before any of the car salesmen had computers or anything in their desks. So my dad was like, look, if you want to learn something, and I usually don't give him credit, but I'll give him credit here. He said, if you want to learn something, go learn sales. And that's what I did. So I did very good that summer selling cars. Coincidentally, blew all the money on material things. Then my apartment got broken into in college and all the stuff got stolen anyways. So I learned the hard way about not blowing all your money. But that's a roundabout way of just, keeping your options open, learning sales, then obviously just keeping doors open because you don't know what the future will hold.
Yeah, for sure. Which leads us to the industry that you are in, which when I look at that, I'm like, Ryan, are you crazy? The world of Medicare? Holy cow. What industry is more complex than that world? Talk to us about Part C.
Yeah, so Part C, like you said in the introduction, it's a national health insurance brokerage firm. We specialize in Medicare, but we do all things health insurance related. It's really not that complex. If you have insurance, health insurance, and most people do, you can kind of figure it out and learn it. The most complex part of it is the hurdle of understanding the differences between all the plans and the parts, from Social Security to CMS, which is Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. And ultimately, it's something that even when I was doing financial advising and estate planning, I knew nothing about. My mom was a trauma nurse, and she has lupus, the autoimmune disorder. So she had to go on to Medicare under 65. Most Medicare people are 65 and above. She had to go on it under 65 because she wasn't able to work anymore. I know I talk fast, so I apologize. She wasn't able to work anymore. And the guy that she was dealing with knew of me and said, hey, is Ryan interested in Medicare? I scoffed at it. This was years prior. And now, I am here today doing it. But it is a complex thing, especially when you're dealing with the older generation. Very face-to-face, very human interaction. They do not like dealing with you on the phone. They do not like dealing with it over the computer, really. A lot of times we get people that say, hey, I don't even have a computer. Can you guys help us? And that's really where we kind of come into play. And the most beautiful thing about it, Brian, is that ultimately It is federally regulated, so we don't get paid off of the premium the way that it was when I was in the estate planning world and the financial advising world. So somebody that's sitting across from me, as long as you're talking to a broker, that's the most important thing, because ultimately we don't have a dog in the fight. All we're there to do is educate you, and then we'll give you our opinion, but you pick what you think is the most suitable for you. And I will say that the government does a pretty good job of that, because ultimately, like I said, whether the plan costs $1 or $1,000 a month, the broker's getting paid the exact same.
Yeah, it's an interesting world, and I'm excited to go a little bit deeper. But part of what I hear is obviously your sales beginning. Huge shout out to your dad. I know you joke that you don't like to give him credit, but honestly, the fact that he got you into sales early, that is a transferable skill to literally every industry. And when I look at your professional background up to this point, estate planning, financial advising, now you're talking about insurance, a lot of that is education. Talk to us about the role of teaching and educating when it comes to serving the clients that you work with.
Yeah, sure. So when I always liked teaching. Shout out to teachers. I think they have a very hard job, even though I didn't like school. I like the idea of educating and teaching and helping people and walking people through. And I think with my background in estate planning for, probably the first 5-7 years, I'd be in these meetings with accountants, financial advisors, family office advisors, all different types. I had no business being in some of these rooms. People that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, I had no business being in these rooms. So I didn't really get a chance to speak, which was kind of a blow to my ego, if you will, because I set up these meetings, but then ultimately I'm in them and people pretty much didn't even realize I was there. So I was able to, from that, learn a lot of valuable skills when it comes to breaking down complex matters and then basically giving it to you in digestible form. Because at the end of the day, I have been in rooms with people that will go round and round. I've been on calls with people, industry people, that will go round and round, and they just bore people to death. And the one most important thing I learned when it comes to teaching and breaking things down is that if you just give somebody the relevant stuff today and ask a lot of questions and try to figure that out, but if you're just giving them what is most important to them today, and that does come with a little bit of, I guess, emotional intelligence and social awareness and all that stuff, and it comes with time. But if you are good at asking the questions, listening, and then just giving them the basics of what they need to know, that's the most important thing. Because we could sit here for the next 5 hours and I can bore you about insurance and Medicare, but I could realistically give you a crash course in, I don't know, probably 12 minutes, and you'd be able to go talk to a relative with somewhat idea as to what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, I love that. And Ryan, I absolutely believe you. That's us Northeasterners. As we move quick, we talk fast. Absolutely. I love that. I feel like this is probably an appropriate part to talk to you about networking, because you brought that up, and I know I cringe, even though I'm an extreme extrovert. When I think about networking, I'm just like, no, I don't want to do it. And I know that so many listeners feel that way as well. It seems like you leverage listening and asking questions and natural curiosity and of course, emotional intelligence. It seems to me like you actually have learned to embrace the networking side of what you do. Talk to us about how Ryan George navigates the world of networking.
Yeah, so I would say I don't do the networking in the formal sense because I hate it. The events, I'm not good at that. What I am good at, though, is following up. If somebody's like, hey, I want you to meet somebody, I will talk to anybody. I'll have a conversation with anybody. And then ultimately leveraging those relationships, not for me, but for them and something that I can help them with. And I know that's corny, and I know it might sound self-serving and things like that, but at the end of the day, it really is true. I have a lot of different connections in different areas, so I'm always trying to piece things together for other people. And I know that ultimately there have been times when I've been left out of getting paid on things or commissions or things like that. And I know that happens and it sucks, and I don't want that to happen, but I have no real control over it once I turn over the relationship. But I have learned that if you are able to connect the dots for people, that it comes back full circle. And it really is true. So I would give advice, if anybody wants the unsolicited advice, to ultimately not really do the traditional networking stuff. Because at the end of the day, the people that are going to that, they usually have just as little, if not less, connections than you do. And a lot of times it's people that are just trying to I don't know, kind of beat their chest and say what they do. And at the end of the day, I just don't really know how effective that is. So yeah, I mean, just talking to different people, being in different spaces, and especially now with being in the Medicare space, because we deal with people that are at the Medicaid line. So that would be, poverty line, all the way up to, somebody that has a company worth tens and tens of millions of dollars. Because once you turn 65 or once you are eligible for Medicare, most instances, I won't get into the weeds of it all, but most instances is when you get booted onto it. So we can't really discriminate the way that I would when I was in the financial advising and estate planning space. So I think just talking to people and just kind of seeing what they do and seeing how you can be of help. And I know that's become more popular over the years, and it can come across as self-serving a lot of times because people are usually a little bit leery. What are they trying to do? But I do think if you're genuine with it and you're honest about it and you really are trying to help, I think it will come back full circle. Not necessarily from them, but maybe from somebody else down the road.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, Ryan, I'll tell you this as someone who talks to entrepreneurs for a living, it shines through in the way that you talk about it, in your attitude of just openness and transparency of, hey, I love helping people. I know it'll come back in some way. I don't know exactly how, but that's why I'm here. And that in and of itself is just an abundance mindset that you're right. It just reaps rewards in so many ways. I will ask you this while we're on the air, because I'm so fascinated by it. Tactically, how the heck do you manage all of the different people that you know, and how do you connect those dots for people? Because I'm not the best when it comes to my phone. I've always wondered how people like you organize your phone, your records, your thoughts. How do you stay on top of all that stuff?
So I will say it probably goes back to my years of not being good at school, because the social aspect was what I wanted to shine at. I honestly just with my phone, and then we have different platforms and different systems and things like that. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the basic of it all, is that we just try to find people that are in one arena and that we can possibly introduce them to another arena and then let them kind of run with the relationship. It's not really our forte in all areas of insurance. Obviously, you can't be an expert in everything, but we have different people for commercial insurance. We have different people for personal insurance. We have people for financial advising. There's just a totally different way to go about it, and everybody has a different way to go about it. But the other thing too is because we do get a chance, especially me, to sit down with so many different people, I just try to keep it in the back of my head. Okay, this person, I just met with a guy and his wife probably last week, owns a home maintenance company. And coincidentally enough, 2 weeks ago, I told my wife we need to find some sort of handyman. I wasn't sure. I know nothing about that stuff. So now he's coming over to do some things for me. So I just always am trying to connect the dots and think that, okay, if I can put this person with this person, obviously that'll look good. And in Medicare, it really is one of those things where one person can turn to 5 to 20, so on and so forth. It's not necessarily that in financial advising and estate planning, because everybody wants to run from you. I was the enemy sitting across the tables of so many people. But now we're just there, like you kind of stated, more of the educator. And that's all we're there to do, is just educate, listen, and then if we can provide value afterwards, that's something that we always try to do and that we're always trying to always looking to do.
Yeah, and it seems to me from the outside looking in that a core part of your strategy, it leverages so many of these ingredients that we've already talked about, and that is partnerships. I think it is so smart, the fact that you guys partner with financial firms, insurance brokerages, pharmacies. Talk to us about that partnership strategy and how it's become that driving force.
Yeah, for sure. So like I said about my mom, there was the Medicare aspect to it. And when I was in the financial advising and estate planning world, we stuck to our lane. So if we needed a tax attorney, we would bring one in. If we needed a specific accountant, we would bring one in. So I kind of learned that young. I started doing that, like I said, when I was 22, after my first failed business, if you will. But yeah, when we partner with these people, it's mainly because the Medicare space predominantly is, and I'm making these numbers up, I have no idea, but I would say 98% of the Medicare agents that we meet are kind of Girl Scouts in a sense, where they just set up a booth and they're like, hey, we got Medicare. And there's only certain times when you can enroll in Medicare. If you're new to Medicare, it's when you're turning 65, and then everything else is during the open enrollment for all those annoying commercials that you guys all see on TV for the last 30 years with Joe Namath, Johnny Walker, things like that. But what we have done is we've kind of taken a different approach, and we're not the only ones that do it. There's a lot of great brokerages out there that do this, but you partner with those financial advisor firms, the accountants, the pharmacies. We had a contract that's on pause with one of the largest privately held grocery store chains in the United States for their pharmacy customers, not for their employees, but for their pharmacy and the customers who would come through there. So what we would do is we would just basically go in and say, hey, we can partner with you. There are some legality issues when it comes to commissions and things like that and how we pay, but ultimately we're just a value add for people. And we get brought in a lot, and it is something that very few people do, especially at a larger level. So we are kind of able to get in with people more from that area, just because there aren't a lot of people that specialize in this, let alone people that have big agencies or big financial firms or pharmacies that even know somebody that truly does specialize in solely this.
Yeah, it's so clear to me, honestly, even more so after our conversation here today, how important relationships are to you. And I'm just thinking about the fact that you're managing these partnerships and relationships that you just gave us insights on. You're also simultaneously managing the actual end consumers, the clients, the customers that you're working with. How's your time split up, Ryan? I'm so excited to hear how you manage all these different sides of the coin.
So I will, again, I said I'm fully transparent. I am not good at service work, not because I'm not responsive. I hate it because, kind of similar how you were saying, like with the introvert extrovert type scenario. If I have a problem, I have no patience. Maybe it's a Northeast thing, like you said, and I just want to get things done immediately. So I call somebody as quickly as I can to get it handled. I have a lot of people that rely on me and us for service, so I'm not good at that. So I try to get that off my plate as much as I can. But when it comes to handling all of that, it's a lot of hats to juggle. And I know people are much better at it than I am. Ultimately, being able to pass off, that was one of the things that I learned from the estate planning side. The place I was at was wonderful in a lot of learning and teaching lessons. But yeah, just being able to pass off, like, listen, you can't be everything to everybody, and that's okay. So I just try to get in, get out with what I know, and then afterwards just kind of follow up, say, hey, this is what we talked about. These are your point of contacts. Hey, you mentioned this. This is my guy Derek that handles all this stuff over here. This is my guy Jeff that handles this stuff over here. And then just kind of leave it from there. But I will be honest with you, I am not good with boundaries, and I get texts at 9 p.m. on Saturdays, and I do respond just because I'm sitting here and I don't have anything else to do. My wife and I don't have any kids yet, so maybe when that happens, that'll change. But yeah, shout out to my wife too, because she is very understanding of it.
I love that. Ryan, that's why we have that phrase, behind every great man is an even greater woman.
That's it, for sure.
And I will say, having interviewed so many entrepreneurs, I've always found the baby effect is incredible, where actually, yes, time is shorter, which places a larger emphasis on the fact that we still need to get things done. So I join you in having no kids right now, but I imagine things will change when we reach that point in our lives. So exciting things to look forward to. With that in mind, I love reflecting on all the lessons that you learned in the past. So I do want to pick on that entrepreneurial mind of yours of what's different, because I would imagine that through each experience, through each venture, you grew and you started to operate differently. When you look at the work that you're doing these days, where in your mind do you say, oh my gosh, I've become so much better of a delegator? We just heard a lot about your delegation skills, or a networker, or productivity wise. What are some of those changes that you acknowledge in yourself?
I think the biggest thing for me, and you go back to the delegation thing, but I think the biggest thing for me is the self-awareness that I've been able to, and I still strive every day to get better and be a better person, all that stuff. But the self-awareness of knowing, like, okay, you can't do everything, and being able to swallow that. Because there's a lot of people that I deal with or see on YouTube, whatever, that it seems, and I don't want to judge a book by its cover, but even people that I know personally and intimately, that they have a hard time passing things off or saying like, look, I'm not good at this. And it doesn't necessarily mean if you say I'm not good at something that you're not good at your, area of expertise, if you will. That was a very hard thing for me to kind of swallow at first. Like I said, I was in those rooms. There was one time I got paid on a larger deal. And it was right when I was first starting out. I was 22, first time I made a little bit of money. And I didn't want to pay this guy, not because he didn't deserve it, but because the way that it broke down was he wasn't really supposed to get paid. We were just kind of doing it because he was helping us. And I fought because I was 22. I was like, I need this money. I want this money. And ultimately, when I went to go give him the check, he was like, oh, he got paid? So he didn't even know. So it was one of those things where I had to learn the hard way, as ultimately you can't do everything for everybody. And if you don't know the answer, that's all right. Just be honest and truthful. The worst thing you can do, and I hate when people do this, is when they try to lie or finagle their way out of what you're asking them. You said it, and you deal with people all day and you talk to people all day. You can tell ordinarily when someone's being genuine or dishonest or whatever. So I am as open can be. And I know I talked to your people about this before. I am an open book. I will say anything. And ultimately, if I don't know, I'm going to say I don't know. And I'll try to get you the answer, or at least put you in touch with someone that has the answer.
Yeah, I love that. Ryan, it's something that I was recently introduced to, this quote that I think it captures the essence of what it means to be a Northeasterner who is just very direct. And that quote said that the truth never minds being questioned. And so that's the thing. And to me, that's the fun part of this podcast is I know that we have amazing guests on that I can ask you anything because you don't care where we go, because you're just going to share your truth and your story. And so you don't mind that. Whereas I know a lot of other shows, and especially I'm going to throw a little bit of shade at the traditional world of PR, is that they like having these preset questions and you can't go off script. We see it in the political arena. That's why political candidates aren't quite as honest as us entrepreneurs all the time, because the truth doesn't mind being questioned, but lies are so much more difficult and treacherous to navigate around. So huge kudos to the way that you operate, Ryan. I always love asking this question at the end of every episode because it's super broad. You can take it in any direction you want. And that is, what's your one best piece of advice? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own business growth journeys, what's that one thing you want to leave them with today?
All right, that's a good question. Like you said, it's very broad. So let me think here. I would say the one piece of advice that I would say, and I tell myself this too, and I kind of said it earlier, the only way that you are going to lose is if you quit. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a different path. If you grew up thinking you wanted to own car dealerships, or you wanted to cut hair, or you wanted to be a teacher, and then ultimately you don't end up doing that, and if you're truly happy with your decision of not doing that, that's one thing. But if you really want something and you really want to make something happen, especially because this is entrepreneur to entrepreneur, if you really want to be in the business space, which is truly what I enjoy, I don't think anybody wakes up and they're like, I love insurance or Medicare or what have you. I like the business space. So as long as you are in that space and you don't waver and you just keep going, you're not going to lose. Yeah, you might have to pivot. Yeah, you might have to take some turns, but you will eventually get there. Might not be on your timeline, and I know it certainly isn't on mine, but you will get there. And I think that's the most important thing for people to realize. And if at some point you're just not who you used to be and you don't want the same things, that's okay too. But I think having the self-awareness is the biggest thing. And if you're truly happy with where you are and who you are, then I don't think anybody can tell you that what you're doing is wrong or you're a failure.
Boom. Well said. I think it was a Winston Churchill quote where he said that failure isn't fatal. And Ryan, your stories, your journey, everything that you've shared with us here today is such a powerful testament to that. I love how frequently self-awareness has come up in today's conversation, because actually you even joked about it very early on in our conversation where you said it was a bruise to my ego. And I think that we have to be willing to go there. And that is why I'm not surprised at all about the work that you've been doing and the way that you show up in the world. So I'm super appreciative of all that advice that you've offered to our listeners today. And at this point, for anyone who wants to see your work in action, I'm so excited. I've been on your LinkedIn and I'm super excited to stay connected there, Ryan, but drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, so due to my past with the world I was in, didn't have any sort of social media other than LinkedIn. So yeah, you could just find me on LinkedIn, and I think you can get this from this episode. I'm happy to talk to, help anybody, as long as they're not pitching things left and right. But yeah, I'm happy to talk to anybody. But LinkedIn, it's just my name, Ryan George. You can find me out of Pittsburgh, PA, right there, and I'm happy to chat with anybody.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find Ryan on LinkedIn down below in the show notes. You don't have to go finding Ryan George is probably a pretty common name, so we're linking directly to this Ryan George, the Ryan George, down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Otherwise, Ryan, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all your time. Thanks for having me.